Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary. A couple big stories to go over. First is longtime Rutgers athletic director Pat Hobbs resigned yesterday abruptly. We're gonna go into that a bit, and then we're gonna discuss the second and final scrimmage recap from fall camp for Rutgers football. That was earlier today. Richie was there, so we'll go over everything Greg said and what Richie saw. But first, this podcast is once again presented to you by Night and Day Apparel. Beat the heat this summer with our hot one-of-a-kind products. With temperatures rising, there's no better time to refresh your wardrobe with cool and stylish summer essentials. Whether you're planning a beach getaway, a picnic in the park, or simply lounging in the yard, we've got you covered. Visit their website today to explore a full range of summer essentials, from pool floats and spatulas to bathing suits and tank tops. If you use our promo code Rutgers Rivals, you get 10% off your purchase. Shop now and keep shopping. Again, if you want to be the most obnoxious tailgater in the lot, get the Loud Cup, because this thing is basically like the cannon or the train whistle inside the stadium, but only outside. And all you need is a cool beverage in there, or you could do it empty and you could just blast away. We're also still running that giveaway. We'll have more information about that at the end, but in order to qualify, you have to be following Night and Day Apparel on Instagram, and you also have to either comment below in this video mentioning the Night and Day giveaway or in an Apple review for an extra entry. All right.
Is it bad that I want you to test it out real quick, or is it going to be too loud?
I mean, do you want to hear it?
I kind of want to hear it. I want to hear what it sounds like. I saw the Instagram video, but I want to hear what it actually sounds like.
All right, everybody. So if you do not want to hear this train whistle Loud Cup, please mute or skip ahead, because I'm about to just honk away on this thing. All right. Ready? Count of three. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, that was louder.
Yeah, this thing's loud. And I was only going about half volume on that. So,
jeez.
If you could imagine what it actually sounds like if you're just going deep breath and actually blown away. Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
All right. Let's get into the Pat Hobbs resignation. Pat Hobbs was, I believe, about to enter his 9th season as the Rutgers athletic director, and abruptly resigned, citing health reasons yesterday in a very strange 5 o'clock or Friday afternoon news dump heading into the weekend. I don't think anybody really saw this coming. There's been a lot of NJ.com articles kind of going deeper into this about how the timing doesn't really make sense, that typically with a state employee, you kind of have sick time or you take a leave of absence, and he just flat out resigned. So I think there's still probably a lot of unanswered questions, and there probably will be more revealed. But what is it that you're hearing about Pat Hobbs' resignation yesterday?
I mean, that's pretty spot on, like the NJ.com article. And I agreed with it yesterday when people were saying on our boards, you don't just, if you have a medical thing, and I'm not saying he doesn't have a medical thing, he might have a medical thing, but if you have something like that, you have sick time, you take a leave of absence, you say, hey, I might need like a couple months to figure out my health situation and kind of see where I'm at from there. And then kind of just go from there, actually. You don't just straight up resign and immediately turn done, I'm out, I'm see ya, gone. Season starting in 2 weeks, for football. And football drives a bus, as we know, among most, if not all schools, at least the high major schools. So for the timing just doesn't make sense. The resignation, the way it's worded, doesn't make sense. It's very vague in the letter that was put out. If I had to guess, there's probably more coming. I'm not going to go in detail of rumors I'm hearing, just because it's rumors at the end of the day. But there's probably more than that coming. And we'll just kind of wait and see for that, waiting for stuff like that to come out, if it does ever come out. Who knows? But right now, it's just kind of a wait and see mode. They're in a national search right now for a new AD. We listed some names. These aren't just random names that I put together, but rather names that I've been told from several sources within the athletic department. So, and just people around Rutgers University in general, some notable people that know what they're talking about and are people in the know. So definitely check out that list. But yeah, it is poor timing. It does suck, because I thought Pat was a pretty good AD. If you look at the records of some of the programs during his tenure, he was working with the bare minimum for most of this stuff.
Yeah.
They've turned around a lot. If you look at the basketball facility, they were one of like 3 programs in Division I college basketball that didn't have their own practice facility. They had to use the rack, and they had to share the rack with wrestling. They had to share the rack with gymnastics. They had to share the rack with volleyball. They had to share the rack with everyone. Like baseball and softball were sharing the rack at one point.
Yeah, they had the batting cages in the corners. Yeah.
Yeah, it was miserable. So he has done a lot. I mean, just look at the buildings before, or where they were before Pat and where they were after Pat. The Rockin' Center's gorgeous. The soccer fields next to it are gorgeous. And it's an academic success center. It's not just for soccer. I know everyone points towards facilities like that being solely for soccer or for a single sport, but it's also for the students and student athletes to go somewhere for their academic tutoring. It also allowed the football facility to open up the Hale Center to allow the Hale Center to now have a podcasting room, which every sport uses right now. They allowed the Hale Center to have a game room where the guys can just hang out and chill for a few. Most of these guys don't even have to leave the Hale Center anymore. They got a new locker room now because they have more space to put other stuff, just do all kinds of things. So it allowed football to get a couple more like amenities and stuff like that. And then like the last but not least, the RWJ Barnabas Center. Like that place is phenomenal. Like every time you walk in there, you're still in shock. And it's been what, like 6 years, 5 years, something like that.
Yep.
So, I mean, he's done a lot of good for Rutgers. It is a little upsetting the way it's ended, but he did a lot in his 8.5 years. So, I mean, you got to commend him for that. And it's arguably one of the hardest jobs, if not the hardest job in high major athletics, college athletics. It's tough. It's tough to please Rutgers fans at the end of the day. I think we do a pretty good job of it.
It was arguably the hardest job. I think because of some of the things he did, it is now a much more desirable job than it was. Now, that's not to say that it's not a difficult job, because when you're going against the likes, even in conference, of some of the schools that we're going against regularly, it is a tougher job than most Big Ten schools. But because of now the facilities that are actually built on campus, the coaches that are in place, the prestige bump that a lot of those programs have had due to sustained success that were brought on in part due to good coaching hires, good support that was built around those programs and those facilities, it is a much more desirable job. But it is not by any means the most desirable job in conference or even in high major sports, but it is squarely in the middle now, which is light years better than where you could say Rutgers was 10 years ago.
Yeah, and you hear people bitch and moan about the NIL stuff and how Pat wasn't on board at first, which he probably wasn't. I shouldn't say probably wasn't. He wasn't like on board, and he was being very cautious because as a lawyer, that's what you do. You basically you wait until there's rules in place and laws in place. But they did turn it around quite a bit with NIL. You think they're getting Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper without NIL? You think they're putting together these recruiting classes without NIL for football? Like NIL has turned around quite a bit for Rutgers. I'm not saying it's great all of a sudden. It's like top 10 in the country, top 15. Hell, it's probably not even the top half, but it's, again, back to the same thing, same argument. They're solely like in the middle of the pack now in college athletics, and you're seeing differences now. But he did do a lot for Rutgers, so I am impressed with what he's done. The records might not speak too greatly for him if you look at like some of the program's records, but these are programs like softball had a season with 8 wins. Like basketball was struggling. Like under Eddie Jordan, they didn't even know how to rebound, according to Eddie. They didn't have to teach them how to rebound. Now they're rebounding. But it does suck the way it ended, but we'll just wait and see where they go for the next athletic director. Kind of going to wait and see.
So they're going to do an exhaustive national search.
Oh, yeah.
So the names that you put together are names from people who are connected, but I think it's safe to say that will be a rapidly evolving list. But early on, who were some of the names that you heard to keep an eye out for in this vacant athletic director role?
Now, I know she's on the list. I know everyone wants her. If you go on our tweets, I'm reading all the replies, the quote tweets. It's like, Sarah, bring back Sarah Baumgartner. She's great. She's good at her job. She's a great fundraiser. But from what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like she's super interested in coming back either. She's second in line at Texas. She probably makes a nice chunk of change down there. I know it's been reported around like 300,000 range. And I think Rutgers was paying Pat a little over $1 million, if I recall. But it just doesn't sound like she's really interested in this job. She might take over Texas eventually at some point. Looking down the rest of the names on the list, there's some connections to Rutgers here and there. Like, who was the other one? Martin Jarmond has some Big Ten ties. He was at Ohio State when Greg was there. He's from North Carolina. He was Boston College's AD. Boston College, mind you. Be pretty grateful you had Pat for 8.5 years, because Boston College has been recycling ADs like every other year. They lost their AD to Penn State 2 years ago. They lost Jarman 3 or 4 years ago to UCLA. Now UCLA's NIL is an issue. They don't really have much donor support there. But he's a former college basketball player. He's young up and comer. He's on a bunch of 40 under 40 lists. I think he just turned 40 technically. So I don't know if he's still eligible for this year's list or not, because I think it's under 40, but whatever. Bernard Muir is a guy that a lot of people have mentioned to me from Stanford. He's been there for quite some time. Stanford is in a weird pickle where they're on the outside looking in conference realignment. And that's huge, because you're just not going to be gaining as much money as everyone else in the world. So there's some talk that he might have like one eye looking out the door, just trying to see what else is out there. Although I was told he's making over $2 million a year, so it's going to be very hard to match that. So money might be an issue with that one. Blake James from Boston College. Currently, like I said, they recycle ADs like every other year. He did get let go at Miami a couple years ago before taking the BC job, but he was pretty good at fundraising at Miami. Now, Miami also kind of sells itself a little bit. And then out of the names that I put out, the last but not least, the one I want to keep a close eye on is Diana, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Sabau or something like that. She's highly respected at Ohio State. Spent like 20-something years there, between working in the ticketing department, working in the fundraising department. She was also head of media for the football team before getting deputy athletic director of Ohio State. She just got her first athletic director job in 2023 of Utah State. And yeah, they had a little bit of a thing going on there with one of their coaches, and Blake Anderson. That was before her time there. So I wouldn't look too much into that. But she was the one that had to make the decision at the end of the day when the investigation was over to fire him. But she is highly regarded among not just the Ohio State people, but among the Big Ten. She was the COO, I think it was, in the Big Ten, working with Tony Petitti, and he's raved about her a lot. I think that one just makes a lot of sense personally, just because her connections. She's big on football. She knows what it takes to get a winning football program. She was there when Greg was there. So it's not like they might have crossed paths. They might not have, but who knows? But yeah, just those are just a couple names off the top of the list. But like you said, it's going to be an ever-changing list too. So this list could be probably thrown in the garbage by tomorrow. Who knows?
Yeah, as these things tend to do. Again, this is all still new news as well for the athletic department in general. They're going to hire a search firm, I'm sure, like they always do. They're going to have different people from the board of governors get involved, and as we've seen in the past, certain people can have more or less influence based on certain things. I think they understand the gravity of making a really good hire here, and I think they're like Greg was talking about in his presser today. There is some pretty good vertical alignment throughout the university now that we didn't always necessarily have. So I do think I do trust that they'll end up making a really good hire. It's just it might not be on the timeline that any of us are hoping for, because again, these athletic calendars just kicked off. So imagine how hard it must be to hire somebody literally at the beginning of right before football season, right as basketball season's creeping up. Right before the school year starts. It's not the best time by any means to hire in a position like athletic director. So,
yeah, it's gonna be tough. I don't think they're gonna make a rash decision, and it sounds like Holloway is gonna have heavy input here. Phil Murphy's gonna have a lot of input here. It sounds like Holloway wants someone that has a little bit of an academic background as well, and some of these guys on that list do. So keep an eye on that. It's going to be interesting. It's just going to be kind of wait and see. But now, that being said, I know people have asked me if, like, Passari, who's taking over the interim AD, if they'll give him the year and then choose after the year. I'm like, hell no. Like, can't afford that. Like, you got to get someone in there that's going to be able to fundraise. Like, fundraising is going to be a little bit tough now because you don't have a permanent AD and you don't know what the new AD's vision would be for anything really.
Yeah, it's really important to fill that role, but timeline TBD. But we will keep you guys up to date. As I'm sure it won't be a question that you have to answer questions on every single day until someone's hired on the board.
No, just once a week in the Ask the Experts every Wednesday. That's it.
So let's transition now to the practice of the scrimmage from today. Like I said, the second and final scrimmage of fall camp. Rutgers is now in game prep mode starting next week. Let's talk a little bit about the scrimmage today, and we'll get into some of the things Greg said after we just talked generally what happened today at the scrimmage.
Yeah, Greg said basically in the beginning, if you listen to his press conference, which if you're on YouTube, just click below, you'll find it very easily. That a lot of young guys played. A lot of the guys with multiple years of Big Ten reps were just not going to be risked at all. He did talk about Johnny Shepard as QB2. That's official. That shouldn't be too much of a shock considering we broke the news on the AJ Sarace thing right before camp started about an upper extremity issue. So he's still limited. Johnny is QB2. I thought Johnny showed some good things today. The wide receiver room still developing. He went out of his way to mention some of the young. I asked him about some of the young guys who specifically stood out. He said Corey Duff. He said Benjamin Black. He said Fama Toure. That room is just completely stacked. Like it's kind of crazy. It's so stacked that they switched a guy to wide receiver in Tommy Amankwa, and he switched back to defensive back. So it's like. Wow. It goes to tell you where things kind of stand there. It's hard to break in there. It's very hard to break in that room. There's just so many bodies. I mean, if you look at it, they added 5 new bodies this offseason. If you include transfers, they got guys healthy again, and they got guys eligible again. Like they just have a lot of dudes in that room. I'm trying to think what else he said. Nothing crazy today. It was just very kind of a basic press conference. Most of the questions were obviously in regards to Pat Hobbs, which I get the first couple, but after that, I'm kind of like, all right, come on, guys, let's move on. Like, let's get back to the scrimmage talk. Yeah, just a very normal, basic day. Just taking it easy on the scrimmage, which is a little interesting for Greg, considering in the past this is a guy who used to have like the world's worst like scrimmages. Guys were breathing heavy coming off the field. It was kind of just a nice, relaxed situation today, and that's their final scrimmage ahead of training camp or ahead of game day.
Yeah, it sounded like Greg. He said specifically like he just didn't want to risk anybody getting hurt. He's kind of had a different approach in terms of playing guys in scrimmages, and like you said, he wanted to give guys who have had a lot of Big Ten reps some rest, let some young guys have an opportunity to make plays and show off what they can do. I thought there was a few interesting questions, a lot of questions about Pat Hobbs in the presser. You know, Greg talked about how they've gotten a lot of things done together in his 4 years, with their 4 years together, how they had a good relationship, and how he's, you know, thinking about him and his family and praying for him for his health issues that he's going through. But I thought some of the actual, like, you know, football related questions were interesting. Craig actually had a really good one when he asked Greg if his approach to this training camp has been any different given how the schedule is structured early on in the season with that early bye. And Greg was really excited to talk about that because he said, yeah, it did. You know, it changed how he approached things, knowing that he's going to have that early bye, you know, trying to kind of balance some of the rest that these guys are getting. Overall, he did say he had a much different approach to camp this year, knowing he had that early bye than he did in the past. So I thought that was a good question. What were some of the questions that stuck out for you, Rich, that were asked in the presser?
I'm trying to remember, to be honest. It was so many Pat Hobbs questions. It was hard to differentiate the questions, but I think someone asked about Jabome and him stepping up a little bit. There really wasn't many questions about the football team today. And it's a shame because they did have a pretty good practice, scrimmage. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was just a very boring day in terms of the scrimmage. I shouldn't say boring in a bad way. It's just very like relaxed, very calm, everyone was kind of just doing their thing. Team looked good. I'm not really sure what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say either. So that's the other problem.
Yeah, that's totally fair. So obviously, we haven't heard of any significant injuries. The main, first team really didn't play a whole lot today. So it sounds like I think there's two things to think about with that. One is they probably feel really good about where this team is right now, because if you didn't, you'd probably want to have the opportunity to get as many reps as you possibly could in while it still doesn't count. Two is that they know how important it is to stay healthy throughout the year, and cultivating that depth that we haven't really had in the past is super important. So getting those extra reps in for young players. So by the end of the season, that these guys who kind of were pretty green and hadn't had much experience are actually pretty grizzled and know what they're doing, because you're going to encounter injuries. It happens every year, and you're going to have points in games where guys are starting to wear down. Like we saw at that last stretch last year after the Ohio State game, it seemed like we just kind of wilted, especially on defense, because they were playing well. It's just that you can only make so many stops without the offense scoring any points to really kind of before you start to wilt. And I think that's part, you just break down physically, part you break down mentally, when you're just doing your job, and the offense isn't. If you think to that Iowa game, the score is 6-0 heading into the fourth quarter. Rutgers ends up losing like 20-something to 0. The Maryland game was like kind of when the levees broke, for lack of a better term, where they're just kind of the defense totally fell apart. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I think they have some really good depth, and getting them these young guys the opportunities to play in game-like situations is really important. And I think they'll have a lot of those opportunities with the first two games as well. When you look at Howard, you look at Akron, like those are the two easiest games on the schedule by far. So you gotta hope they round into form as a full team by the time that bye rolls around.
I mean, looking back to last year, they suffered some injuries along the trenches, specifically defensive tackle at times last year. And you look at it this year, you're able to get these young guys so many reps, as many reps as possible, for the sole fact, like you said, or like Craig said too, the bye week in week 3. You're not, I don't want to say it's like a bye week 3 weeks in a row, but like Howard is very simple. Akron should be very simple. And you get a bye week to get, like you said, to get these guys ready to go for later in the season, not even just next year or the year after, but just, God forbid something happens, because injuries do happen at the end of the day, especially with football. That you have these guys that have playing experience early on, whether it be weeks 1, week 2, even week 3 in the bye week. Like, you're going to get these guys all ready to go for later in the season. God forbid they need them for injury-wise reasons, or maybe they're just stepping up, and maybe these guys are just starting to stand out more and more. There's several like young guys that you'll probably see week 1, and you'll probably be shocked and be like, oh shit, I forgot all about him. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there you go. This guy just stood out. So yeah, I mean, it's very important to get these young guys reps. It was just a good scrimmage overall today. Like, nothing really else to be said there.
So we covered a lot. Is there anything we haven't talked about? Any additional topics you wanted to hit on before we head out today?
Not really. The one thing I do want to mention is the Rutgers Club of New York City. They do have, I think it's at Penn, New York City, it's called, the bar. I forget the exact name of the bar, but the guy Zach over there that runs everything, for away games, they're going to have a bunch of different events. They're going to have giveaways. Where is this? It's called Pennsylvania 6, New York City. It's on West 31st Street, right next to MSG. So you get off the train, you're right there. I plan on attending at least one of them. I'm not sure which one yet for one of the away games, but we're partnering with them. We're going to do a bunch of giveaways. They also just started a Rutgers Club of Nashville that's going to have watch parties, so that's pretty cool. Might have to make a little trip down to Nashville. I haven't been. I've heard good things, though. And that's really it. We're just kind of getting ready for the season. We're only going to get one practice availability next week, and Greg will talk again. And then the week after that, Monday hits, that's press conference day, and that's getting ready for Thursday night. It's a weird schedule this year. Thursday night game, 2 Friday night games, across the country games. So get ready because the new Big Ten is here and it's right around the corner. And I can't wait to stay up till 2:30 in the morning writing a game recap. I'm so excited! Yay!
Yeah, that'll be an interesting week. I do want to talk more about this giveaway. Like we already said,
Yes. Yeah.
Night and Day Apparel, our promoting sponsor, is doing a giveaway in conjunction with us. You got to do two things in order to be eligible for the giveaway. One, you got to follow them on Instagram. Their handle is just night.and.day.apparel. That's on Instagram. You have to be following them, and you also have to write either in the comments below Night and Day giveaway or give us a review on Apple Podcasts mentioning Night and Day giveaway, and you can get 2 entries for doing that. They're giving away 3 products. Are we giving 3 things away to one person or 3 separate things away to 3 different people?
That is a good question. I think that's really up to us to decide. Up to you.
3 separate winners, so we got more people to spread the love around too. So 3 separate winners will get 1 prize, and we'll announce that the winner the week of the Howard game, so the week of the 26th at some point, the last pod before the actual game, we will announce the winner. So keep entering, keep sending those comments, keep following Night and Day on Instagram, and you'll have more chances to win the contest. But that's all I got. I want to thank you for listening once again. It's an exciting season. Can't wait for it to get started. But for me and Rich, this has been another edition of the Night Report podcast, signing off.